These are some of the most extreme animals on Earth. They're able to withstand conditions that would destroy most life almost immediately. Every year, we learn more and more about what they can do. But important questions like, how did they get here? And why do they have to be resistant to extreme conditions still remain? Are they an alien species, or just a testament of the amazing power of evolution? This is the tardigrade. Hi, I'm Danielle Dufault, and you're watching Animalogic. Tardigrades are the rock stars of the microbiology world. Their ability to survive extreme temperatures and brutal conditions is legendary. And yet they seem to be everywhere. Take a quick look around the internet and you'll see that there are hundreds of people going to their local park, collecting some moss, looking through a microscope, and then boom, beautiful tardigrades. Were they really in our backyards all along? Seems pretty easy. So as we learn all about the amazing biology of this cute microanimal, we'll try and see if we can find one ourselves. Let's see if our pond-wading producer can find any.
We have some distilled water here, and I'm gonna put it here. And I'm going to let the moss absorb some of that water. It's in the tree. It's a part that is not fully submerged, so it's just moist enough.
While he heads back, let's dive into the amazing world of tardigrades. If you've heard about them, you probably know that they can survive in really extreme situations. But what we're really trying to understand in this episode is why. What turned these adorable alien-looking cuties into basically xenomorphs? Okay, not those xenomorphs. Let's start from the beginning. What the heck is a water bear? Where do they come from, and where are they going? Tardigrades are a phylum of about 1,500 known microscopic animals. They range in size from 0.1 to about 1.5 millimeters. The smallest ones are about as thick as a human hair, and the largest ones are about as thick as a credit card, meaning you could potentially see them with the naked eye, under the right light, if you know where to look. The larger ones are carnivorous and eat all sorts of microorganisms, including smaller tardigrades. Tardigrade cannibals. Sounds like the nerdiest prog rock band to ever exist. I like it. But the majority of them are herbivores, munching on algae and other plant matter. You can tell them apart from other species by the fact that they have 8 legs. In most terrestrial species, 3 pairs are to the side, and the last pair points backwards to help them grasp plants and stay in place when there's a strong current. That leg arrangement, and the fact that they don't swim but just walk everywhere with a bear-like gait, is what gives them their adorable nickname. Unfortunately for them, what comes to mind for a lot of people when they think of a tardigrade is an illustration that's made them look like a balloon knot. We're talking about this picture. I'm sure you've seen it, but no, this is not a true representation of a tardigrade. Tardigrade mouths are more like tubes with tiny needles to pierce the cells of their food to slurp up their juices. So no, myth busted. Tardigrades don't have butt faces. Back to the drawing board for me. What they do have is a lot of charisma. They're famous for being basically superheroes. So let's get a little bit into how they earned their capes. Just how do they survive? Well, horrible situations. Are scientists putting these poor tardigrades through hell for science? Unfortunately, yes. Wouldn't it be awesome if we could just ask them and they'd let us know what their superpowers are? Unfortunately, Tardigradian is a language we still don't understand. I wish there was an app to communicate with animals and made it as easy to talk to tardigrades as it is to learn a new language with Mondly.
Mondly is a language learning app that teaches you over 40 languages. You can use the chatbot to get real-time feedback on your pronunciation. All the materials are recorded by fluent speakers.
Adios.
And the app teaches you practical lessons to make sure you learn to speak the way the locals speak. You can do lessons and quizzes, but my favorite function is the hands-free learning mode, where you can practice the language without having to be on your phone. Very helpful for when you're out or just cooking, or just want to take a rest from screens.
Mondly is having a back-to-school sale, so scan this QR code or go to mondly.app/Animalogic for a 65% discount on their lifetime access package for all languages. I'll for sure be taking advantage of that deal. Back to hardcore experiments tardigrades have been through and survived. The first thing you need to know is that only some species at certain times are seemingly indestructible.
Terrestrial tardigrades, even though they live in moss, lichen, and other moist places, need water to move around, eat, and reproduce. When the water dries out, they retract their heads, legs, and butt and turn into a little ball called a tun, which is an old-timey name for a barrel.
When doing this, they get rid of as much water as possible and produce protective molecules like antioxidants, protein-repairing molecules, and trehalose, a chemical that combines with proteins to turn the inside of the tardigrade into biological glass. Yup, the secret to extreme survival is the ability to turn themselves into basically tiny glass gargoyles.
In their tun mode, they go into cryptobiosis. This is kind of like an extreme version of hibernation, where their metabolism fully stops. Their oxygen consumption goes below detectable levels, they stop producing energy, and all the regular cell functioning gets frozen in glass. In a way, it's almost like being dead. But similar to a plant seed, if you add water, it comes to life. We don't know how long they can survive as a tun. The oldest tardigrades brought back from this state were about 30 years old and were found in Antarctic moss. But other cryptobiotic animals, like nematodes and rotifers, have been brought back to life from permafrost tens of thousands of years old. They were slightly surprised to wake up to skyscrapers. So there's a real chance these sleeping beauties could last thousands of years too. These guys are just insane.
Only in this state that tardigrades can survive all sorts of horrible situations. In their regular, happy water bear shape, they're pretty easy to kill. Because of this, we don't call them extremophiles, an animal adapted to live in extreme environments, but extremotolerant, an animal that can survive extreme events under certain conditions.
Of course, they can survive droughts, but the Tun state also protects from other environmental hazards, like freezing. Those 30-year-old tardigrades had been frozen at temperatures of around -20 degrees Celsius, and after rehydrating, they were healthy enough to mate. Some species, like a Doribiotis cornifer, can survive short periods of time in liquid nitrogen, which is about -196 degrees Celsius.
On the other end of the spectrum, tardigrades didn't do so hot under extreme heat. Even in tun form, they start dying at temperatures of around 50 degrees Celsius.
Rictursius coronifer and Milnesium tardigratum can survive at around 70 degrees for a little bit. But no water bears have ever survived temperatures of over 100 degrees Celsius.
And yeah, scientists did boil tardigrades alive for science. It's sad for them, but hey, knowing this helps us debunk conspiracy theories, like tardigrades came from outer space in a meteorite. They wouldn't have survived the impact or the temperatures afterwards.
In 2007, these little bugs got sent to space and survived. The experiment was done aboard the Photon M3 satellite. Tardigrades in dried Tun form were placed in coin-like boxes with tiny holes in them. Once in space, some compartments were exposed to the vacuum of space and space radiation, but shielded from UV light. Others were exposed to different types of UV light. After 12 days in orbit, the satellite came to Earth and the tardigrades were taken to the lab to get rehydrated and see how they did.
The ones who were shielded from UV light were completely fine, but the ones who took a full ray gun load of UV rays did not make it. Direct UV light causes such irreparable damage to the DNA that not even tardigrades can survive. Take that as a reminder to wear sunscreen.
To add to this, in 2011, tardigrades were taken to the ISS. The experiment was similar, only this time they were kept in the vacuum of space for months at a time. Even those who were shielded from UV light had much lower survival rates. That means that cosmic radiation does affect tardigrades, unfortunately.
But okay, if they survived in space, I'm sure they'll survive in our little lab. Let's see how our collection is going.
We looked and looked, and we found amazing microfauna. But unfortunately, no tardigrades. Did we do something wrong? Or were we just unlucky?
We know there's tardigrades out there waiting for their chance to become YouTube stars. We'll try again and come back and see what we catch. Moving on to the really cool science of tardigrades, we know how hardy they are in Tun form. The question is, how did they evolve to do that? To get some insights about the past of these little dudes, we asked our friend and tardigrade expert to tell us all about tardigrade paleontology.
I'm Mark Mapalo, and I'm currently a postdoc in Harvard, and I work on tardigrades. So basically, the tardigrade is a phylum in its own right, and it's a very, very old lineage. Based on my research, it's kind of like estimated around the 500 million years ago, so it's around the Cambrian. And what happens is that all tardigrades came from marine organisms, and my hypothesis is that as they shifted towards a terrestrial habitat, they acquired this strong cryptobiotic ability that they're known for. And this is quite interesting as well to mention, is that tardigrades always need water to be active. So they're not fully terrestrial, I would say. So in our tardigrade community, where we call them limnoterrestrial, because they always need to be surrounded by water in order for them to be active, right? My point there is that if you're in the marine environment, you're always surrounded by water, right? But if you're in a terrestrial habitat like mosses and lichens, there's higher chance for those water to actually disappear, to evaporate. So that's a very stressful condition for tardigrades to be in.
But how do we go back and look at tardigrades from the Cambrian? Finding vertebrate fossils is one thing, but finding a 500 million year old microorganism is a whole other ballpark. The answer reminds me of something. Yep, tardigrades have been found in amber, but as you can imagine, they're incredibly hard to find.
Yeah, that's actually very close. There's currently only 4 tardigrade fossils, and all of them are in amber. I'm not kidding you. Like when I published that paper about those amber tardigrades, some people keep on asking me if I could actually extract DNA from this amber, like in Jurassic Park. So I kind of have an idea of like to what extent a DNA can be preserved. And I am confident to say that we won't be able to extract any DNA from those amber.
So if there's no DNA to be analyzed, how do you identify old tardigrades?
As I mentioned, it's purely morphological, and I would say you really need to have a good sense of what morphology to look at, what traits to look at. All of them are holotypes, so they represent each of them as different species, different genera. So the risk of it's not worth it to extract, try to see if there's DNA there.
So if you have ancient amber that seems to have some microorganisms in it, contact Mark. You might have in your hands the first ever specimen of an unknown species. With that amazing context, we went to the shore to see if we could find some tardigrades.
We didn't care if it was marine or terrestrial. We looked for moss, lichens, and other wet spots. Hopefully we catch something.
While they dry up, let's get into the OG tardigrades, marine tardigrades. Of course, since we can't find them in our backyards, they're very understudied compared to their terrestrial cousins. But in some ways, they're even cooler.
Most terrestrial tardigrades look like gummy bears, and many have adapted to cryptobiosis. Marine tardigrades are nothing like that. Since they never have to deal with being dried up and stuck for years, they don't have the same degree of cryptobiosis. But they make up for their lack of superpowers by being totally weird-looking and very mysterious.
They're such unique organisms, and yet most people haven't even heard of marine tardigrades. So we asked our friend Paul, one of the top experts on the subject, to tell us all about these little weirdos.
Hi, I'm Paul Bartles. I'm Professor Emeritus in the Department of Biology at Warren Wilson College, which is in Asheville, North Carolina. Yeah, marine tardigrades are a really small subset of all tardigrades known. There are only about 260 species known compared to 1,500 total tardigrades worldwide. And the reason why that they're not known very well is because nobody studies them. They're a little more difficult to work with. They're smaller. They can be rare. And of course, there's all the problems of sampling deep water habitats, etc.
Researchers think that there could be as many marine species as there are terrestrial species. But considering how strange they are, it would seem that it would be easier to find new species.
It's like looking at something in a Dr. Seuss book. I mean, they're incredibly diverse. They have, instead of just a few claws, some of them have suction cups on the tips of their fingers. And some of them have big, long suction paddles, and they have all different kinds of claw shapes and structures. They have, some of them have extensions around their cuticle that are like flattened wings that spread out around them. And some of them have posterior structures that branch out into, one of them has like nine balloons on each side coming off of these antenna-like structures coming off the rear of the animal. Just crazy shapes.
To understand how these water creepy crawlies turned into space conquerors, it helps to think of what kind of marine habitats they occupied. And the first tardigrades to get used to getting dried up were likely the beach tardigrades.
There's a group of marine tardigrades called Echinuscoides that live in the plates of barnacles in the intertidal, and they are incredibly tough, and they can handle the fluctuations in salinity and dryness and wetness, and they're cryptobiotic. Most deep water marine tardigrades we don't think are cryptobiotic, but we don't really know. They haven't really been tested very carefully. But it's likely that it evolved in intertidal habitats where there are all these extreme fluctuations in environmental variables.
Tardigrades like this likely gradually got the ability to survive in dry areas after getting caught in dried up tidal pools or in areas near the shore. But this is just a hypothesis at the moment. The development of tardigrade cryptobiosis is one of nature's greatest mysteries.
If you're interested in the evolution of tardigrades, please consider helping us figure out this gigantic microbiology enigma. But as I mentioned earlier, there's very little research going into those species compared to terrestrial tardigrades. Speaking of which, let's go see if our terrestrial tardigrades woke up.
The results were, in a way, amazing.
Gross. I love it.
There was so much life in those samples. There were some rotifers and what seemed to be worms. But unfortunately, the tardigrades were still camera shy. And after a few hours of looking at very cool creatures, but not a single tardigrade, we gave up.
Thankfully, our friend Martin, who's an expert not only at finding, but also filming tardigrades, was around to give us some advice on finally catching our own tardigrade.
Yeah, my name is Martin, and I am the creator of the Instagram and YouTube account My Microscopic World. And I hunt for microanimals and single-celled organisms. So at first I heard that tardigrades were everywhere, but they were incredibly hard to find at first. That surprised me a lot, since they were supposed to be everywhere. You hear that you're supposed to find some moss and put it in some water and wait a couple of days, but that's figured I have to do this a faster and smarter way. So what I do now is that I scrape some moss and lichen of some trees and put it in a small container and put a bit of water in, just shake it around for 30 seconds, pour it into a petri dish, and then start to look around in the debris. And that's a much faster way to find them than the usual way.
If you get into tardigrade watching, you can help scientists trying to figure out the mysteries of tardigrade evolution and biology. All you gotta do is find who's researching them in your area. They'll love any help that you can give them. But if you just want to learn to photograph tardigrades for fun, that's totally cool too, and there's no better teacher than Martin. So why do his videos look so textured and colorful?
Standard microscopy uses light coming from a light source from the bottom and illuminating the sample from below, but oblique illumination takes the light and shines on the sample from the side, so it gets a bit shadowy, it gets a bit more contrast. And then dark field illumination is where you have a black background with only lights coming from the side. So it's a black background and the animal is illuminated only, and that gives a lot more contrast.
Martin is doing an amazing job filming not only tardigrades, but all sorts of microorganisms. Tardigrades aren't even his favorite animal to look at, so check out his channel, My Microscopic World, linked in the description to see his beautiful work, especially with rotifers, his favorite animals.
Amazing! I was thrilled to find rotifers too.
It's important to keep looking at tardigrades, because despite all the experiments of their superhero survival skills, we know very little about most of their life when they're not having a very bad time.
For example, we don't know why some species are more successful than others. We don't know for sure how they've spread around the world. The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. But we don't know the specifics of where they emerged and where they went next.
We don't know how many species there are in the world. But if one of your life goals was to discover a new animal, looking for tardigrades, especially marine tardigrades, would be a great place to start.
There are even fluorescent tardigrades. They glow under black light, which is a weird adaptation because for the most part, they're blind. We don't know if that was an adaptation for a specific problem or just an accident of evolution.
So with all these questions yet to be answered, we wondered, what would the experts like to learn about tardigrades?
There's several steps in the story of tardigrade evolution that I hope that someday we'll figure out. Like when did cryptobiosis evolve? How did it evolve? What were their ancestors, really? We think we know what some of the fossils were that were like them, that gave rise to them, but not sure. So there's several of those big steps along the way. It's like, how did that happen? When did that happen?
For me, the very first is definitely how do tardigrades survive in these extreme conditions, like particularly limno-terrestrial tardigrades. So a lot of research has been done in order to try to elucidate this, and they've already discovered some proteins, some genes that are only exclusive, that are only found in tardigrades, right? So there have been already papers that basically try to insert some of these genes in human cell lines and saw that this human cell line had increased radio tolerance, for example.
I wonder if we can someday apply their hibernation skills to human cells, to store organs for organ transplantation for a longer period of time. I work in human health right now. I teach nurses, so I wonder if we can take some of their incredible abilities and add them to human cells.
Imagine that! A tiny little microorganism could possibly help us have healthier lives. It would be incredible, and the best part is that they're right outside, even though I couldn't find them. But we'll keep trying, and we will let you know when we get our very first tardigrade. So, what should I talk about next? Please let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for new episodes every week. And thanks again, Mondly, for sponsoring this episode. Thanks for watching. See ya!